What's up guys, and welcome to another episode of El Jardín Perdido. Today I'm going to show you how to source your own clay naturally. Alright guys, so my last video was kind of a downer, so I wanted to do something a little more fun, a little more different. So basically in a nutshell, I made this bonsai pot. My daughter and I actually trained a bonsai tree, and so we thought it'd be really cool if we naturally sourced some clay, fired it up, and yeah, made a legit bonsai pot for it. So this could vary depending on where you're at. I naturally have quite a bit of clay content in my soil. So basically the first process is to just dig up some soil and throw it in a bucket. Like I said, this will vary from area to area. One thing, if you know you're in a sandy location or you don't really have clay in your soil, one thing you can do is go to a local riverbank. There are certain places that may have local access to such soil. So this is a pretty simple process. We're doing a wet process here. There are variations of this, but this is kind of like an indigenous pottery type thing, which I think is pretty cool. Basically, all you're going to need is some naturally sourced soil that has high clay content or any clay content. And I'm using about 3 buckets here, and you'll also need a bed sheet, and I find it handy to have a bungee cord as I show you guys through the process. Also, you guys will need something to sift, like a strainer. All right, so you guys will have to bear with me. The sun's kind of going in and out here. I usually wouldn't do this in the afternoon, but it's something that I'm doing right now and I wanted to show you guys. This is my little workstation. I have a few extra buckets just in case, but I have a few buckets here, and what I've done is tied a bed sheet around this bucket, just making sure there's no debris in there. But my main bucket here is where I put all the soil and clay with a bunch of water. So you'll see here that it's actually kind of settled. You can see it's a little bit translucent. I mixed it up not too long ago, but what's happening here is a lot of the debris is floating to the top, and that's what we're going to sift out. You can see from my last batch, this is all the organic debris and sand and stuff. There's probably a little bit of clay in here, but for the most part that's mostly sand. But yeah, that's our sift pile. But we're going to get in there and just sift all that garbage out. Found that a lot of this stuff you can also use your hands, hence why mine are pretty dirty right now, but the sifter works really nice. So for the next process, what we're going to want to do is just grab any kind of stick. Literally, you can just use a twig or something, and we're going to stir pretty vigorously. And what we're trying to do here is get the clay to dissolve into the water. And this may be you know, 2 or 3 step process, but essentially you stir it up and the clay should eventually get suspended into the water. So we're going to give it a good stir here. So in hindsight, if you want to get a pretty good ratio, at least 2 parts water to the amount of dirt you gathered, and you're going to get all the way at the bottom and just kind of break things up. If this has actually been soaking for a pretty good while, but if you find you have really dry, compacted soil, you may need to get in there with your hands and break things up. That's what I had to do the first time. And we're just stirring away until I can start feeling a lot of this stuff loosen up. And I can actually feel the sand at the bottom. During this process, that's the gist. A lot of the rocks, sand, heavier debris is going to float to the bottom while the clay is left suspended into the water. So now what I'm going to do is go ahead and pour this gently into another bucket. As you get to the end, you're going to want to slow down. And I see I made a lot more organic debris here, which is fine. So now we're slowing down as we get to the bottom here. We will need to sift again, just seeing how much debris came up when we stirred things up, which is fine. In the other bucket, you'll see a lot of sand particles in there. There's actually still a good couple clumps of clay, so I'm actually going to dilute this again and stir it up some more and do the same process into this other bucket. So in the bottom here is where we have sand, rocks. There's actually not quite that much in there. So I'm going to run this through the sifter one more time, and I'm going to do the surface real quick. I'm also going to show you something else we can do. I'll have to be pretty careful here, but I'm going to go ahead and run all of this through the strainer into this bucket. Alright, well, you're going to have to unclog that. As you can see, that's only half the bucket, and there's a lot of extraneous material that is not pure clay. All right, and I know this seems a little bit tedious, but it's worth it. I did have a lot of cracking issues with my last batch. I'm gonna rinse this, and we're gonna strain it one more time. Okay, so from this point, what we're gonna do is wait a little while, let most of the clay settle to the bottom, in which the water will eventually become almost clear. We can pour off a majority of that water, and what's gonna be under there is clay. We're gonna have really saturated, kind of diluted clay mud there. And after that, we can move on to straining it through the bed sheet. All right guys, so we're back a few hours later. It is nighttime now, but I'll bring you in a little closer and you can see how most of the particles have settled and the water on top is almost completely clear. All right, so at this point, we're going to slowly and gently, because if we stir this up, all the clay is gonna get back into the water. We're just going to pour off the excess water here. as well as some of the other organic material that's floated to the top. And you can kind of see where the clay starts, and we're gonna back off there. All right, so now what we're gonna do is start pouring into here. Where it's mostly water, that's gonna go through really quick and just catch the water on the bottom. According to our levels here, it should catch the clay, and then all the water will go to the bottom of the bucket here. So I'm gonna go ahead and set the camera up so you guys can see exactly what I'm doing as I filter that through. All right, so for the most part, this part that's pretty much just water is going to pass through fairly quickly, but you are seeing some clay start to accumulate. And so this first run is going to drain pretty quickly. And after that, I'm going to stir this up so all the clay at the bottom gets worked in there. Since I'm feeling impatient, I might actually put another bucket on the other side here so we can catch some a little quicker. On this bucket, I'm not really worried about the fact that there's crap in here because we're just catching what's on the top. This is old clay. Kind of brushing things off to make sure we have a clean slate, nothing's really contaminated. Yeah. So I'm just kind of brushing out anything that might contaminate the new batch. Find a nice depth. That should be pretty good. So the other thing is you don't really want to like force this and squeeze it out because you'll force a lot of the clay particles out too. So anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and fill this guy up. Stir things around. A lot of the clay is settled down in this one. So I'm sure you guys can see this one is a lot lighter. This one has more of the clay that was towards the bottom. Again, I'm just being impatient. Eventually both of these will filter through, settle out, start drying, and we can mix those both together. All right guys, so it's a little more than a day, almost into the 2-day period, and we've actually had a lot of wind, so a lot of any of this precipitation has actually dried up. I'll go ahead and bring you guys in a little closer to see that. So yeah, I did disperse things a little more just to get some more surface area. And as you can see, almost all the clay has dried up. I did uncover things just so I could get some more evaporation. So you will see a little bit of debris in there that I'll try to clean out as we kind of combine all this, and I'll show you guys a nice mound of clay here. As much little debris as I can see, there really isn't a ton, but we want to try to keep this pure. And really you can just start flaking some of this off. It's really easy to rehydrate too. But one of the great things about using fabric is it comes off the fabric fairly easy. So really we're just going to start combining all this. All right, so as you guys can see, we end up with a really nice clay consistency. So yeah, I know this was a little different than some of my other videos, but I do kind of revolve around self-sufficiency, gardening in general. This specifically I started doing as a project to make bonsai pots, but sourcing it naturally seemed to be a pretty cool thing. So let me know if you guys have any questions, just drop them below in the comments. Give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed this. Also let me know if you want me to cover the firing kiln that I did kind of in Adobe style. I think I put a little clip in there to kind of give you guys the gist. All right guys, well that's gonna do it for today's video. As always, thanks for tuning in. Until next time.